Many people know or have heard of the magnificent region between Florence and Siena called Chianti. We invite you to discover the richness of this region in a journey from its gorgeous countryside to its wine and further on, its great history. It is September, harvest time. The grapes of Sangiovese and Canaiolo are ready to be picked. Now, the union of man's work and that of nature's, which began 6 months ago during the winter, bears its fruits. An attentive selection of the best grapes is performed by hand. Then, the grapes become part of the primary fermentation process, where man, technology, and art are combined to offer one of the most famous wines in the world. With the best grapes selected, the Chianti region provides a sweet, unique wine directly from the wine cellars of the Renaissance, the holy wine. But the Chianti region is not just wine. As soon as winter arrives, the olive harvest begins. The olives are selected by hand, thus guaranteeing the best fruits of the crop. Between the beautiful Chianti hills, it is possible to come upon another tradition rooted in Greve: livestock and pig farming. Here, certain breeds of swine were saved from extinction and are now bred in the wild, the Cinta and the Grey pig, both of which are indigenous to the Chianti region. It's only been a few years since the pigs have returned to populate the Falorni family's pig farm. One cannot forget that the Chianti region, just as the Valley of Greve, has had an important role throughout the centuries. This is mostly due to its geographical location. Many are the churches and abbeys that have brought us an artistic patrimony that is still on display in the Museum of the Sacred Arts of San Francesco in Greve in Chianti. However, it was the Renaissance that had greatly influenced the Florentine countryside. During those centuries of political revolution, it served as a refuge for the families of Florentine nobles, especially for the Medici, who regarded the territories south of Florence to be the perfect outpost for ensuring the security of the Florentine Republic and its nobility. Here, Niccolò da Uzzano was a permanent resident. In the early 15th century, he became the magistrate of Florence to help defend Cosimo di' Medici from the hostility of the Albizzi family, thus permitting Cosimo's rise to power and giving way to the Medicean era itself. Donatello paid tribute to him with a bust which is still on display at the Museum of Bargello. Dante Alighieri also mentions him in the 30th verse of the Divine Comedy, in which he cites the valley of Greve. In the neighboring villa, Vigna Maggio, resided a local woman called Lisa Gherardini, who was immortalized on canvas by Leonardo da Vinci in his famous painting entitled Mona Lisa. In Greve's countryside, we can find the birthplace of some of the greatest explorers of the Renaissance. The castle of Verrazzano was the home of Giovanni da Verrazzano, who between 1524 and 1528 sailed in search of a passage between the Orient and the New World. Therefore, North America's Atlantic coast was documented and essentially represented on a map for the first time in history. Today, we can find the Giovanni da Verrazzano Bridge between Staten Island and New York, which was built in his honor. If the presence of Giovanni da Verrazzano in Chianti was documented long ago, and the Center of Studies of Castello offered us a scientific testimony, we would also discover another great 16th century explorer, Amerigo Vespucci, who between 1497 and 1504 embarked on 4 great journeys alongside the great German cartographer Waldseemüller. Thanks to him, this new continent was given its name, America. The monks of Badia and Passignano tell of a young Amerigo who was a prominent student, but traces of the Vespucci family in the Chianti region have only recently been discovered. In one of the houses in the medieval town of Montefiorale, you can find a wasp sculpted into the doorway, which is the family crest of the Vespucci family. Also in Montefiorale lies a tombstone in remembrance of the last descendant of this noble Florentine family. After a historical journey through the Chianti Hills, we arrive to one of the most important communities in this region, Greve, which is also renowned for its town square. The economic development of the town is due to the trade that took place in its streets and in the famous town square, which can be traced as far back as 1290. After Pietro Leopoldo I of Lorena and Giovanni Cavalcanti, it was Lorenzo the Magnificent who honored the beautiful Nencia of Barberino with the phrase, "I was in Greve, at the market." This famous triangular town square has seen many changes throughout the centuries, but certain traits remain the same: agriculture and tourism. Though the town square is no longer used for trading livestock, it still opens on Saturdays, and it is also to this day the livelihood of its citizens. The town's antique butcher shop is still a Grevinian tradition, as well as its wine cellars. Wine aficionados return every year to the square for a taste of Greve's traditional wine and food.